Segment two. We're going to talk about the MVP discussion. So you guys know me. I have this rule. The MVP conversation gets moved up every single year. And now it happens in like October. You almost get into it in the preseason. Like, man, in the preseason, who's the favorite for the MVP right now based on what we've seen? Or just if you have an MVP conversation that starts before the season, what you're really telling me is that the MVP, that your MVP, sort of how you weigh it, has something to do with narratives that are completely beyond the players' control. Because if nobody's played a game, then how can it be this? But here's why I really dislike it. And not in order. In fact, the last point I'm going to make is probably the most important one. But number one, when we talk about value in basketball, so much people think about it in terms of one-on-one skill set. And one-on-one skill set is massively overrated in NBA. The NBA is a 5-on-5 game. That doesn't mean it's not important. It's actually supremely important. It's just also overrated because it's the easiest thing to see. If Kevin Durant crosses over LeBron James and hits a jumper for three in his face, we look at that and we go, that's a good basketball player because it was mano-a-mano. There's nobody else involved, no other context needed. He just was better than him on this one play, and we can extrapolate that and say, okay, that must be equally or close to equally have an equal correlation to how good they are overall at the game of basketball. One-on-one is really important. The Nuggets are lacking guys right now, especially without Jamal Murray, who can just break guys down one-on-one. Jokic is a great one-on-one player, but as a big, you still need guys to be able to get you the ball. It's easier to double like on the block than it is in other parts of the, other parts, because when you're on the block, you usually pass the ball further away. Whereas if you're on the perimeter and you double, you can pass the ball closer to. So there are reasons that it's harder for a big man to shine one-on-one, but nonetheless, the analytics prove it out. As an isolation player, Jokic is a fantastic scorer. He has gotten to the point where if you don't double him in the post, he's going to put up massive numbers on you. He is now 9th in the NBA in points per game. So as a scorer, and even as a one-on-one scorer, he's still one of the best in all of the NBA, but he gets docked because he's not quite as good as, say, a Kevin Durant, maybe a Joel Embiid, maybe a Steph Curry, and some of these other guys who their one-on-one-ness shines a little bit more. But this is why I dislike it, because it's not representative. In fact, one-on-one basketball is just a portion of what makes basketball good and compelling. 2-on-2 basketball and 3-on-3 is the most underrated thing. Most of basketball features actions between 2 or 3 players, with 2 other players reading the court and spacing the court off of them. There's very few actions where all 5 guys are directly involved in the play. Like a pick and roll is 2 players. A pin down is 3 players. A person with the ball, person setting the screen, somebody coming off of it. Most basketball is some form of 2-on-2 or 3-on-3. Again, with the 4th and 5th guys as sort of like waiting to enter the fray, but out of the fray. Is there anybody in the NBA that would have a bad 2-man game with Nikola Jokic? Dead serious about this question. Is there a single, I shouldn't say single player, a single star? Because it's interesting to me that we're talking about James Harden and Joel Embiid, 2 of the best one-on-one players in the NBA. One of the guys, the best pick and roll, and we're thinking, I wonder if it'll work. There's only one ball. I wonder. And look, I think it probably will, but I also think there will be some growing pains as those guys learn to work together. James Harden and Jokic works. Kevin Durant and Nikola Jokic works. Steph Curry and Nikola Jokic work. Giannis and Nikola Jokic work. There's no player in the NBA that you couldn't tell me, pair them with Jokic, and Jokic wouldn't make their skill sets better. They wouldn't augment them. Do you know how crazy this is? Like Kevin Durant, there's guys that would and would not work. Now, they're so good that they can just play one-on-one around each other, and maybe that would work as it is. But Kyrie Irving would work with Jokic. Like any of these guys would work with Jokic. Ja Morant, they're all so different. Their skill sets are all so different. But if you paired them with Nikola Jokic, all of them, every single one of them would be made better, and the team would be made better because of them and that impact. To me, this is the most absurd thing. And if you asked anybody that, like, would players be made better by playing with Jokic, at least offensively, they'd say absolutely, of course. They understand this intuitively. So why don't we weigh that the way we weigh one-on-one? Oh, he would be a one-on-one player, especially when you consider that one-on-one possessions make up like 8% of NBA possessions, like true isolations make up 1%. By the way, one-on-one maestros like DeMar DeRozan also would be made better with Nikola Jokic. Like Jokic would still make his life significantly easier. But more than any of this, making a team sport, basketball is such a beautiful sport, because to me it is maybe the best in all of sports, the best confluence of individual greatness and team greatness. An individual without a great connection to their team can be a good team, but they can't win a championship. A great team without great individuals can be great, but probably can't win a championship. It's the blend of those things that makes basketball so fantastic and so fascinating. It's why LeBron James has been the greatest player in the NBA for at least 10 years over his career, but only has 4 championships. Sometimes he had a best team, but they underachieved. Sometimes he didn't have the best team, and so they got beat there. But it's that confluence, it's that growing together that makes the game so interesting. So when we watch even the All-Star game last night, what are we talking about at halftime? Who's the leader of MVP? Who's the MVP? It's boring. It's horribly boring. We're taking this sport where it should be about how do guys come together? How do they play together? What's the process that this team is going through and where are they at in that process? And instead it reduces it all down to one player. And by the way, we do this with Jokic. We talk about on-off as if he's carrying a bunch of horrible players. Now, is he missing his second best player and his 2-man game partner in Jamal Murray? Of course. Is he missing his best shooter and Michael Porter Jr. and the best floor and like versatile floor spacer that makes his life easier? Of course, these things happen. But so often the conversation is like, one player is good, everyone else is bad. This is the context for it. A basketball team is all about the blending of talents, the blending of chemistry, and all these different things. And this is why talking about it, constantly going back to the MVP, to me, misses the most interesting aspects of basketball. And it's most of all, it's just boring. I'm so bored of the conversation. I can't imagine I'm the only one. To me, it's a Twinkie. It's like you keep throwing Twinkies at people and they're like, man, this is really sweet. It lasts. Then you eat it and then you feel terrible and your body just like degenerates. And we just keep doing it because it gives you that quick endorphin rush. Like Nick Wright says something about Jokic and we're all like, oh, we all have to comment it on top of it. It becomes this addiction, but we're actually not providing any substance to ourselves. We're just giving the lowest common denominator. And over time, I'm just looking at this, a timeline full of Twinkies being thrown around everywhere. And I'm like, I just want a salad. I'm so sick of eating junk food. That's what the MVP discourse is to me.